Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, dear listeners, hello and welcome back to the podcast. And today I have a brand new guest, Joe Spector. Joe, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, whenever I have somebody new on the podcast, I always ask them to introduce themselves. First, I want to tell the listeners that today we're talking about boundary setting, especially in the context of social events and special occasions like Christmas. And now I would like Joe to let you all know, Joe, who you are, what you do, and why you're so awesome at it.
Thank you for that. So I'm Joe. I'm a retired firefighter, and I have overcome a lot of mental health challenges myself several years ago. And so now I'm considered a subject matter expert on emotional fitness and resilience, usually within the public safety realm, police and firefighters. But I also do this for everyday people through Instagram and through podcasts and things like that. And so I train a lot of firefighters and police officers on some of the skills we're going to talk about today, but I talk about a broad array of topics, whether it's family communication and conflict resolution, building resilience through emotional processing, emotionally fit parenting, managing your own emotions, and things of that nature. A lot of skills that many of us, particularly in my age bracket, did not get growing up, and we kind of had to learn the hard way after a challenge or after we accidentally caused damage to ourselves or our loved ones. And so my goal is just to kind of share evidence-based but tools that I've learned along the way in through my experience. And a lot of what you're talking about today, some of our biggest challenges come from communicating with the people who we love the most, and that those are difficult waters to navigate. So I think that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, but I talk about a broad array of topics.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm really excited about this topic because I don't know how old you are, but I'm 29 and I didn't get taught much about communication, and I had to learn a lot on my own when I became a coach because I realized that the way I was communicating through my content and to my clients wasn't as effective as it could have been. So I'm really keen to get this podcast out there and have this conversation with you because I think that understanding communication can be really life changing. And it sounds maybe hyperbolic, but it has changed my approach to all of my relationships at work and in my personal life.
I'm 43. Where are you from, can I ask?
Yeah, I was born and bred in Italy, and then I moved to the UK 10 years ago.
Okay, and so I don't even know if there are cultural differences or generational differences, or it just might be a thing where the world is kind of lacking this. I feel like here in the United States, like I have little kids, well, they're not so little anymore. I have big kids now. They are not taught any of these skills. And like you said, when you learn it, whether it's on Instagram, family communication, podcast content, talking to your neighbors, effective communication where you can deliver a message, especially in an emotionally charged situation, and resolve conflict peacefully and manage your own body and emotions and words and get your message across. Those are some of the most important life skills you can have. And they are only taught here if you're lucky enough to have a parent or somebody who knows this, which is just, it blows my mind, to be honest with you, because it's so important. And that's kind of my mission on this. I teach a lot of parents here how to teach their kids because, like you said, nobody taught me growing up or modeled it. And I can't quite figure out why it's not taught in school, to be honest with you. Emotional regulation and communication, these things, they're pivotal. Like you said, once you learn them, they change everything. And like it sounds hyperbolic, but it's true. And you almost have to be lucky enough to have somebody in your life who knows them, or to reach out when you're finally an adult and you find a podcast. And these things should really be shared. This information should not be hoarded. It should be shared with as many people as necessary. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And right back at you. That's why I really wanted to have you on and why I waited for you to be free. Because, dear listeners, this podcast has been a long time in the making. In that I first contacted Joe about 7 months ago now, but he's very busy. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Joe, today.
And thank you for your patience with me.
Not a problem at all. But speaking of how life changing communication can be, in the context of special occasions that especially have to do with food. One way in which we might find ourselves struggling to communicate is when it comes to setting boundaries. And I find that in my personal experience, but also when I talk to my clients, it tends to be because it feels uncomfortable. You feel like you're being bossy if you're setting some boundaries around what you might decide to eat or not to eat, or like you're being selfish when somebody else made something and you don't really want to eat it for one reason or another, or even like the relationship that you have with that person or these people is going to be um, compromised, or the atmosphere of the special occasion like Christmas dinner might be made worse or more awkward than it already is. So I'm wondering, Joe, what do you think about these feelings of discomfort that we can experience around boundary settings?
So, if anybody is experiencing what you just shared, first of all, just know that a lot of people are experiencing these things, and those feelings are very real and you're valid. But also know that while boundaries are challenging, if you practice them in a healthy way, you can get comfortable in these situations. And there are ways to turn the volume down on the awkwardness. And so it's up to you. I don't want to take the wheel here, but what works best for me teaching boundaries usually is first to share a few mindsets and ideas regarding boundaries to kind of um, maybe challenge your narrative on what you think holding boundaries is, and how to do healthy boundaries. And then I like to do a little bit of like examples or role play where we can actually walk through, like, okay, I've shared with you these concepts, but what does it look like? I walk into the Christmas party and my mom has made the cake and I don't want to eat it. How can we have this conversation? That feels really helpful for me, for the listener. So does that work for you if I share a little bit of teaching on boundaries and then we actually walk through some of them and practice using
Yeah,
examples?
that would be awesome.
Okay, so one of the contexts that you brought up was that people feel bossy when they're holding boundaries. And boundaries are one of these things where the pendulum needs to be right in the middle. If you are aggressive, or you're trying to control people, or you're being too bossy, you're just going to sever your relationships and make everybody angry, and you're going to feel bad about how you held the boundary. But if you make yourself small and become a people pleaser and you're too afraid of confrontation, that's not good for your mental health or your physical health or your emotional health or your inner child, and you're just going to get stepped on. So the sweet spot is being very direct and assertive with your communication and your needs, but also still being gentle and seeing the other person's point of view. It's not really either or, it's kind of both. And you can eliminate feeling bossy if you don't try to control anybody else. Your boundaries are about you. So, for example, I was just helping a friend the other day who, his mother has a drinking problem, and she's a beautiful woman. I've known her since he's a friend of mine since childhood. It's not her fault. She's struggling with addiction, and we all understand it's the addiction talking. It's not her. So we have a radical empathy viewpoint. He loves his mom. We love her. She's an amazing human. We actually feel really bad for what she's going through, but he needs to protect himself because being around her and his children being around her is not safe while she's drinking. And so I was helping him through this. And if he tells her, you cannot drink alcohol anymore, that's bossy, right? That's controlling her behavior. But if he tells her, I love you and I don't want to control you, but I can no longer have my kids around anybody who's drinking alcohol, it's not safe for them, and it makes me emotionally scared, The message is not you have to quit drinking. The message is what I cannot be around this behavior. And so that's like an extreme example, and that one is very difficult. But you make your boundaries all about you, which this, if you're a people pleaser, can feel selfish, but there's nothing selfish with sticking up and advocating for yourself, especially if you're doing it in a kind way. Like if you're struggling with food, either like what you talked about, too much food or skinny shaming, any struggle with food, or maybe you're not struggling with food anymore, you've overcome that and you're eating healthy and you don't want to fall back, you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to eat within your comfort zone, and nobody else will advocate for that. So there's nothing selfish about protecting your health. It's just, people might view that as selfish because we live in a toxic culture where anybody who holds boundaries is selfish, but that is not the case. Just like if you are an addict and you stop drinking and you say, listen, I love you, but I can't go to this bachelor party at the bar because I can't be around alcohol. You're not telling your friend he's unethical for having a party at a bar. You're just saying, I can't be around that. It's not good for my health. And so you can avoid feeling bossy if you don't try to control the other person's behavior. So if mom makes a cake and I'm not eating cake anymore, just like if I were a diabetic, like let's say the sugar causes my insulin to spike. Well, if you have a situation where you've gotten very fit and you feel good eating this way, and the cake is going to throw you off, or you are not at a healthy body weight and you're trying desperately to reduce your calories and your sugar intake, either way, you don't have to justify that. Just like a diabetic doesn't have to justify that it would spike his insulin. That it's easier for people to see that with the diabetic because there's a physical thing, and the addiction struggles are usually more invisible and they're about our feelings, but it doesn't matter. The diabetic, the person who's trying to eat less calories, or the person who's really fit and wants to stay fit, everybody's justified to not eat the cake or to eat the cake. We're all humans with autonomy, and everybody is allowed to choose their eating. So mom makes a cake, I don't want to eat the cake. How do I approach that without hurting mom's feelings? That's like a big question, or that was one of the questions. And it would be so easy if you were a diabetic. You would say, oh my gosh, thank you for making this cake. It smells delicious. It looks beautiful. I appreciate the effort you put into it. I wish I could have it, but I'll end up in the hospital if I do. You can kind of use that framework and tell mom, like, oh my God, you're not telling mom, don't make the cake, don't put the cake in front of me. But you might say, mom, oh my gosh, if I eat that, I will not feel good. It will make me sick, or it will throw me off track on my diet. And I'm just starting to feel healthy and feel good. So I appreciate the effort that you put into making it. And oh my gosh, it looks beautiful. And I wish I could have a slice for me. I'm not trying to control you. And I don't want this to be awkward between us. And this has nothing to do with you. I can't eat this. And I'm so sorry. And a lot of times, if you make it about that and you just say, I would feel bad if I ate the cake, it would make me feel sick, or it would make me feel emotionally bad. If you're dealing with your loved ones, if you really just share with them authentically and honestly that this is about you and your health and your feelings, but no slight on them, usually one of two things will happen. If they are genuinely your loved ones and you have a healthy relationship with them, they're going to say, like, that's great, I want you to feel good. And you can even say things like, hey, I want us both to feel good. You feel good eating the cake, I love that. I wish I could, but I can't. I would feel bad not eating the cake. If they should, I don't usually like to use the word should, but in a healthy relationship, they should not step on you for that or make you feel bad about honoring your feelings and your health. And if they do, that's a challenge, but that does happen. I have a friend, my neighbor, who she lost a lot of weight after years and years of struggling, and she just was feeling so good. And her family doesn't have the same eating habits as her, and so she wanted to continue to go out with them, but she was ordering the salad, and they were shaming her around the table, like overtly. And it's her family, and they were making fun of her every time. And uh, she was just sitting in that, and it didn't feel good. And I felt so bad because I was like, man, I understand where they're coming from. They're projecting their insecurities onto her because they can't do what she did, or when people do things different or they heal, it offends people. But like, she was not judging them at all. She was just saying, I want to eat the salad. And her loved ones were being really mean to her about it. And it broke my heart, to be honest with you. So I think if you say things like that, though, like, I'm not judging you, I'm not trying to control you, I wish I could do it, I can't right now. That's step one. And then if they still are mean to you about it, if you say, "Oh, f you" or whatever, then you're going to get into a fight. There's a way to follow that up with like a question. If you tell people what to do, they're always going to feel like you're being bossy or they're being controlled. But if you ask a provocative question and make them answer, it's different. So if you say like, "Hey, so I was just trying to explain to you that I'm grateful that you can eat the cake and make the cake, and I'm not trying to be bossy, but that I will feel really uncomfortable if I do. It'll make me sick or mentally, emotionally sick, or make me slip back off my diet. Do you want me to feel uncomfortable? I'm confused here. Or was there not clarity in my message?" And then you kind of put them on the spot, and then they feel like a jerk if they say, "Yeah, I want you to feel uncomfortable." You kind of like you give them the opportunity to dig in and show their true colors and their intentions, but you also give them a way to exit and save face, because if you say, "Hey, so I was trying to communicate to you that I just don't want to feel bad, but I want you to feel good. I want everybody to feel good." Are you saying you don't want me to feel good? You want me to eat the cake because that will make you feel better at the expense of me feeling good, and it's going to take me eating the cake for you to feel good, and you want me to not feel good? I'm confused here. What's good about that is if they really feel that way, you're giving them an opportunity to show you that, and then you might have to go, "Okay, this is my uncle. I love him, but I don't care what he thinks. He just really doesn't care about my well-being." But also you give him the ability to realize like, "Oh, I sound like a jerk in this situation," and he can walk. You're giving him an exit, so you're asking the question, he can go, "No, no, 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 I misunderstood you. I do want you to feel good, and we can leave it alone," or whatever. And then you can progressively escalate with questions like that. Like if he says, "Yeah, I want you to eat the cake, you're making me feel like a jerk," go like, "Oh, am I responsible to make you feel good, but you're not responsible to make me feel good? I kind of feel like we're all responsible to make ourselves feel good, but I want everybody to feel good here. Is this going to be an issue? Like, are you saying that if I don't eat the cake, we have to have tension? Or can we move past this? And you and I, because I love you, Uncle Bob, I want to hang out with you. I want to laugh. I want to have Thanksgiving dinner. I just can't eat the cake. Are you saying this is like a barrier between us loving and connecting?" And again, he could take the exit, like, "No, man, I'm being a jerk. My bad." Or he could really dig in, and then you might be faced with an uncomfortable decision, which is you have two difficult choices. Well, you have a few different difficult choices. You can eat the cake, but then you're stepping on yourself and you're not advocating for your inner child. And sometimes that's the right move. For me, that's not the right move. I caved to peer pressure my whole life, and I don't like that. I don't do it anymore. But this is a decision for everybody to make. Just know that that's a tough one. And if you do it, you're kind of like, you're letting him control you. And I don't like that, but it's up to you. You might feel very uncomfortable holding the boundary, or you can hold the boundary, but stay in the relationship. And then you have friction because you're like, "Man, if Uncle Bob told me he was getting healthy and didn't want to eat the cake, I would support him, but he doesn't support me. And I got to sit in that with him and share space with him." Or you can kind of walk away from the engagement in the relationship and go, "Man, I can't go eat Thanksgiving at Uncle Bob's house because he doesn't respect me." None of those are easy decisions, but the goal is to not have to make those decisions at all by clearly communicating and not being aggressive and asking provocative questions and really just sharing your feelings. I know I talked a lot there. We can pause for a minute. Does that all make sense? And is that kind of what you were asking?
It is. Let me see if I got this right. So, what I hear you say is that if you want to set your boundaries in a way that doesn't come across as bossy or selfish, you want to strike the balance between being direct and assertive, but also still gentle, and avoid making yourself too small, but also making yourself too big by trying to control other people. So you want to explain that boundaries, any boundary that you set, is all about you and not about the other person. And it sounds like you also want to show support of the other person's efforts, just to clarify that there's really no judgment that you're passing on them. Like when you were saying, you could say, "Oh, that cake looks amazing. Clearly, you've put a lot of effort into it, but I for my own reasons, I'm not going to eat it this one time. And then in some cases, you might be challenged on that, even if you've been as clear and respectful as you could be. At which point, Joe, you're suggesting ask a provocative question, um, help the other person see that they are making you uncomfortable, and they're maybe because sometimes people don't really understand that they might be well intentioned and they don't realize how big of a discomfort they're causing you. And so based on their response, you can then decide if you want to stay in the relationship and hold the boundary, walk away from the relationship and hold the boundary, or decide to not hold that boundary. And these are all challenging decisions, but it's up to every person to choose which one is best for them at that one time. Would that be an accurate summary?
A plus. You got everything perfectly. You nailed it. And to touch on that a little bit more, a lot of people who don't have practice at holding boundaries think that it's unkind to hold a boundary, or I have to be aggressive when I hold the boundary. And you can actually hold your boundary very assertively, but we know the difference in our body language. So, like if somebody's telling you, I just worked so hard to get this diet and I haven't eaten clean, why would you do this to me? That's very different. So, pause for a moment and take a breath. Tell yourself, hey, you're safe. You're just having a conversation, because your nervous system might be activated if you're a people pleaser and you're scared of conflict. Like, relax your shoulders, relax your jaw, and just like offer a kind tone of voice the way you would if you weren't holding a boundary. Like, you can have a friendly tone of voice and be kind, but also push back and be direct. So it just like we talked about, like adding the kindness in there, like, oh man, I want you to feel supported, I want me to feel supported. And this is where boundaries get they get challenging when two people have competing needs. So like my wife and I have two children, and if we both didn't get a lot of sleep and we both have self-care we need to do, and she says, I want to hold the boundary, I can't watch the kids today, I need self-care. And I go, I want to hold a boundary, I can't watch the kids today, I need self-care. Now we have conflicting needs, and that's a different conversation where you go, okay, a lot of times what happens in that situation is one person caves and the other person is resentful, and that's not good. And so the best way to do that is to say, we both have an empty cup and we both want to get our cup filled, and we both have competing needs. um, how can I listen to you and you listen to me? And maybe how can we compromise? Maybe half the day I watch the kids and suck it up, and half the day you do. Not everybody's going to get all their needs met. Or maybe today I watch the kids, but tomorrow you give me self care. But that's in a situation where both are real needs and both are valid, and there's a team effort going on here. If I want you to eat a piece of cake because that makes me feel good, you're not being bossy by saying no. I'm being bossy by trying to make you eat something. And so we have to flip the script. Our people pleaser brain and our peer pressure family are going to tell you that if you hold this boundary, you're being weird. They're going to, you'll notice that if somebody gaslights you or puts a label on you, that's a red flag. Like, no, don't take that. You're bossy, you're weird, your diet is weird, you're aggressive, you're extreme. Like, holding a boundary with what you eat is none of the above. You're not, in fact, can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and you were telling me that, oh, I'm trying to be healthy? I would be like, good job, bro. How can I support you? I'll make a keto brownie for you. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool. Like, if you imagine saying, oh, I don't like that you're being healthy, I need to control what you eat so that I can feel good. Like, if it's the other person being bossy with you, that's your red flag. Like, I'm gonna stay kind here and I'm gonna stay gentle, but I'm not budging on this. I'm not being controlling. Your boundaries are almost like your personal property, like your home here, where like in my house, I keep the doors locked. I don't let just anybody in here. I have children who I have to protect, but I let some people in here if they're my friends and I trust them and I know them. And that's no different. I'm entitled to do that. This is my home and I have to keep everybody safe. Well, your mental health and your physical health, those are your home too. And you're allowed to lock the door and let some people in and not let other people in. And if somebody's knocking at the door and tell me, hey, you're rude because you don't want to let me in, I would feel better if you let me into your house. And I was like, well, yeah, but you're an axe murderer, I don't want to let you in, that sounds crazy to me. Like, you know what I mean? So uh you really just kind of have to pause and ask yourself, is this person have a good point, or are they trying to control me, or am I trying to control them? No, no, no. I'm just trying to be healthy for me. Okay, do I care enough about this person and the relationship to go through the challenge of holding the boundaries? Yes, it's Uncle Bob. I love Uncle Bob. I'm going to do this. And then you have a tactical way of doing it. And then you're always wanting to stay gentle. You're always wanting to give them an out, but also like nobody will protect your mental, physical, or emotional or spiritual health like you. It's honestly, it's your responsibility to do it. And that can feel really uncomfortable at times. And these are challenging topics, especially around eating, because we all have to eat. You know, you don't have to drink alcohol. So if you step away from the bar, it's not abnormal. But like everybody has to sit down and make food choices, and everybody is not used to people making different food choices. And so we run into that. I personally have run into this a lot. I have a lot of practice with this. It's why Marcus wanted to have me on, because I eat for me. I don't judge anybody else or their diet. I don't say my diet is right. I don't even like the word diet. It's just food choices I make because I have diverticulitis, and so some things flared me up, and I'm at what I consider to be a healthy body weight where I feel good and my blood work is good, and my food choices, they look very different than everybody else's food choices. I eat whole foods mostly. I eat kind of lower carbs, and the carbs that I eat are like organic blueberries and certain fruits that don't flare my belly up. And I eat a lot of grass fed meat and eggs. And I kind of like low carb paleo if you had to put a label on it, I guess. But I don't put a label on it. But that's not what my family eats. I'm in Arizona. We eat Mexican food and we have real greasy Thanksgiving dinner. And I have had to go through this, and I have had to enlighten them that this is not about me rejecting their food choices. Their food choices make me feel sick, and I get brain fog, and I'm sensitive to foods. And so, but also I love you and I want to be around you. So can you be around me and respect my choices and let me eat a little bit differently, but still share space? Because Thanksgiving dinner is really about sitting around the table and loving each other and sharing what we're grateful for. Or is this an issue? And if so, can we work it out? And honestly, when I phrase it like that, nobody's really ever pushed back too hard. The art is getting the phrasing down and, you know, the nuance, and that takes practice. It's very hard to do this if you don't have practice. And so this sounds really strange to do, but if you have a friend who, or a coach, or anybody who you trust, if you can practice boundaries with them, it becomes easier. Like the more you do it in real life or with a practice partner, the easier it becomes. And so sometimes you can do role play, like call up a friend who you trust and be like, I'm going to dinner with my family. They're going to judge me for my food choices. I listened to this podcast. I want to practice this. Can we practice? And it feels so weird. You're acting, but like have this conversation, and even have your friend kind of play the role of like, this is my mom. She always gets offended when I don't eat the pie. Can you play her and let me practice this with you? And that feels silly, but it actually gives you so much confidence when you go into the real conversation if you've had the practice. Like when you're getting hired with the fire department, the big piece of the fire department is what they call oral board interviews. You sit in front of three firefighters and they ask you like, why do you want to work for our department? Why do you want to be a firefighter? Tell me your strengths, tell me your weaknesses. And then you have another interview with the chiefs, and it's really stressful. So what we do is we do mock interviews where you come to the fire station if you're thinking about getting hired, and we pretend we're doing an interview, and we look at you rigidly and we put the timer on and we do it like it's real, but it's not real, and you get stressed out and you get all emotional, even though you know these are just three people who are trying to help you out. But then when you go do the real one, it's much less stressful because you practiced it a little bit.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm wondering, I think timing when it comes to boundary setting is really important. So I'd like to get your thoughts, Joe, on when it may be best to raise the topic of your own boundaries around food.
I wish I had written that down, and I'm so glad you brought it up. It's a very important component to any sort of conflict resolution is timing. Because if you are feeling an emotional charge over this topic, let's say I'm about to have dinner with you tomorrow, and I know that you're going to challenge my food choice. And so I'm feeling like stressed out, and I've been practicing with my friend, and I'm thinking, now is the time for me to hold this boundary with you. So I call you up. But what if you have had a really bad day at work and you're really stressed out and you're dealing with the kids and you've been up all night? That conversation is not going to go well because there's two people involved in that conversation. And so this is where you have to give a little bit, because relationships, you don't compromise on everything, but you do need to compromise on some things. And one of those things is telling your person who you're setting a boundary with, like, I want to have a conversation with you. And this is where like a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way. I'm nervous about this conversation and I don't want to fight with you, but I have to share something that's uncomfortable for me with you. Text message works. When is a good time for you? If you ask them when is a good time, if they're averse to conflict, they may ignore you and ghost you and say never, but hopefully they answer. Um, but that gives them the opportunity to go, right now is not a good time. I got a handful of groceries, I'm paying the bills, I'm really stressed out. Can we talk this evening? You know what I mean? And so, because you for the best resolution of conflict, you always want both people to be connecting when they are voluntarily saying now is an okay time and I'm not emotionally charged up over this. And so first of all, getting their input and saying when would be a good time to have a tough conversation is very important, or is now a good time. And I feel like every situation is different, but since we're talking about food choices, before the meal happens is much better if you have the opportunity, and so is one on one. If you have these conversations in front of other people, it's almost always going to go sideways because people feel like you're putting them on the spot or you're calling them out in front of other people. Like, people don't necessarily know how to react in conflict. So sometimes they get aggressive or they shut down. Maybe mom offers you that cake and you're right there and you say, I don't want to eat the cake because of X, Y, or Z. And she feels offended. And now you guys are fighting and other people are looking. That's not the time to do it. You might have to. You might get to a dinner where you haven't had a chance to do it ahead of time, but if you are able to do it ahead of time and have these conversations one on one, I did that a lot too with my family. Just call my cousin, call my mom, call everybody, and like kind of let them know, like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the way I'm eating. I don't want to make this awkward. Is this going to work? And is now an okay time to talk about this with you? So I think asking when is a good time, doing it one on one, and preferably before you run into the situation is going to be ideal. These are not always things that you can control, but if you can control any of those variables, you have the best outcome possibility usually.
Thank you. And I'm also thinking we don't always have the exact same degree of intimacy with everyone. So when it comes to boundary setting, it can be helpful to be honest and share the reason why you're setting a boundary. Because when you share a reason, it's much less likely in general that if the person uh, wants you to feel good, they will challenge that boundary. But sometimes we just don't want to share. For example, I would imagine that you don't really want to share with everyone that you have a diverticulitis. So, what could you do in a situation where you want to hold a boundary, but you don't want to be fully honest about the reasons because they're your own and you don't have that kind of relationship with the person involved?
You brought up another really good point that I forgot to bring up that I'm thankful that you brought up, because your audience needs to hear this. Because vulnerability and sharing vulnerably can be one of the most beautiful human connections on the planet. If you have somebody who you have that authentic connection with and who genuinely cares about you. But it can also be one of the most damaging things if you open your heart up and you share private information or you get really vulnerable and they judge you or they criticize you or they tell other people and they break your confidence. And then you opened yourself up to vulnerability and you got your heart broken. And that is damaging. So I'm a big vulnerability guy. I share my stories vulnerably, but like, not everybody is designed to share everything with everybody. In fact, I advise most people not to get up on stages and talk about their most vulnerable moments the way I do it. It's not common. It's not good for everybody. You have to find somebody who you have shared values with, who cares about you, who you can trust, and then you can be vulnerable where it's mutual and they're vulnerable back and forth. And I guess I was giving examples for the situation where you were comfortable with this person and you love them and you want to be vulnerable. Like I was using mom as an example. Um, but there are a lot of times where you don't want to do that, and I need to clarify, these are options for everybody, and I was giving the option for when you want to give the explanation, but you don't owe anybody an explanation for why you're making your choices. Some of these topics can be very uncomfortable or embarrassing, or people can use them against you, and you get to choose. You're empowered, and people sometimes will try to pressure you for the why. Sometimes people will ask you very vulnerable, intimate questions, and if you're a people pleaser, you might start over explaining and feeling like you need to. Like, for example, one of my friends, trigger warning, this is a tough story, but one of my friends died by suicide, one of my best friends, and I couldn't believe how many people would ask me, "Oh, your friend passed away. I'm so sorry. How did he die?" Man, that's an invasive question. And I was not, now I talk about suicide a lot because I'm doing suicide prevention, but like, I remember thinking, I don't want to answer this question. I don't know you that well. And it feels like I'm betraying my friend and I'm not comfortable. And people ask me that so much, like, how did he die? How did he die? Because I was young, I was in my 20s. And I wasn't prepared to have people ask me a personal question that I didn't know how to answer. And I would almost always just give the answer, but then it didn't feel good. Um, and so I'm going to answer two questions. If somebody asks you why and you're not comfortable with it, you get to choose. Is this person entitled to my explanation because I love them and I want to share it with them and it's worth having that dialogue? Or maybe it's your cousin, but your cousin gossips to your uncle and he judges people on food choices and he's just not a safe person to be gentle with. You can say, you know what? It's a personal thing. I really don't feel like talking about it. Sorry about that. You can stay kind and hold the line on not answering. And that's uncomfortable for most people, but not every not all your private information is available to everybody, and people are rude and they ask questions sometimes. And so it's okay to say, to be honest with you, I'm really not comfortable sharing that. Like, that's what I would say too. Like, also, like, when I retired from the fire department, I had a traumatic brain injury on the job, and I retired a little bit earlier than I wanted to because of that, and now I'm comfortable talking about it. But when I was going through it, and I was getting these surgeries and going to these doctors and all this stuff, people would always ask me like, "Oh, you're retired? What happened?" And I was not comfortable talking about it. It was very traumatic for me, and I had to learn to just be honest and say, you know what, right now I'm not really comfortable talking about it. There's nothing wrong with saying that, and if people get offended by that, some people aren't used to being told no, but that's on them. You know what I mean? You're allowed to stay kind, stay gentle, and say, you know what, I would love to share with you maybe another time. I'm really not comfortable talking about that. Again, you're not saying you're rude for asking. You're not putting them on the defense. You're saying, I'm not comfortable talking about that. And you're allowed to not be comfortable with things. You know what I mean? And so, or you can word it however it feels authentic to you. Like, oh, you know what? I'd rather not open that door right now. I'd rather not talk about that. Let's talk about something else, yeah, or whatever. Um, but to circle back to your question, which is how do you hold that boundary without giving all of those explanations? Let me think about that for a moment. Don't over explain. You can say, like, let's say you show up, it's a work lunch and you have a bunch of coworkers and you don't feel like talking to them about the challenges that you've had with food, and you're not going to eat the cake and you're going to order a salad. My first step would just to be to not make an issue of it. Just don't eat the cake and order the salad and see if anybody says anything. Like, if they don't say anything, then you don't even have to have the conversation. And then if they ask or they start making fun of you or they say something weird, you can say something as simple as like, "Oh man, I'm happy for you. Eat whatever you want. This is the right choice for me. This is what feels good for me." Or, "I don't feel good if I eat that." Or whatever, however comfortable you're doing a minimal amount of information, and just make it about you and just be like, "Oh yeah, this is what works for me. I don't feel great if I eat that." "Oh, really? Tell me more about that." I don't like talking about food and diet. Like, we got so many other things in common. Let's talk about stuff. So it's learning how to hold your ground and say the minimal amount, but not say more than you're comfortable with. Sometimes no doesn't need an explanation. Does
Yeah,
that answer
that
your
makes,
question?
yes, it does, and it makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay.
And then I was wondering, sometimes even when we do hold boundaries, we explain them and we try to be respectful. You've mentioned that if somebody challenges you, you can ask a provocative question. Now, sometimes we can be challenged in a way that makes us feel really uncomfortable. For example, in the email where I explained my outline to you, Joe, I was saying how there are two typical examples. There are people in bigger bodies who tend to get more comments on their food choices than people in smaller bodies because of societal internalized weight stigma, to where if we see somebody in a larger body, we tend to assume that it is their fault in quotation marks because they have no willpower, again quotation marks here. And then there's another example where there are people who are in smaller bodies that typically look quite athletic, and or people will know that they are really into their fitness in this season of life, and they are made to feel uncomfortable for being extra in quotation marks, or the boring person who's always ordering the salads. So in both situations you might be too uncomfortable to ask a provocative question, and I wonder, how would you deal with that?
I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to speak a little more broadly at first. You don't want to really exclude people, but if you are going through, let's talk about the people who are in the larger body first. If you're struggling, because there's a lot going on there, right? It's food choice, but there's a lot of emotional struggling. There's self-consciousness. Like if you're in a bigger body and that's the thing that you're most self-conscious about, you don't have the luxury of not sharing with people because they can see your struggle, and so you're vulnerable in that situation. And it breaks my heart that people are not supportive, but sometimes people are not supportive, or they say little things, or they even think they're being supportive, and they're like, oh, do you want this carrot instead? And you're like, you thought you were being helpful, but you're literally you're showcasing my vulnerability here. And so sometimes even people with good intentions can be very mean by accident. So that's a challenging one. So I'm not suggesting you isolate yourself, but if you are going through that and you do have a crew of people who you know, love, and support you, and if you can say, like, I'm going through something right now, I'm trying to either be comfortable in my bigger body, or I'm trying to diet down to get into a different body, whatever it is you're trying to do. Can you support me through this? And like, here's what support looks like. I don't want to talk about food choice. I just want to go out with my friends and have fun and not think about my body or whatever. If you can collect people around you who love you and are willing to respect your boundaries and support you, hang out with those people as much as you possibly can. And if other people can't, it might be time to not be around those people, which is a difficult choice. So that's just like a broader view. Like, not everybody has the luxury of having a big support system and lots of amazing friends who will support you, who you can be vulnerable with. But man, even if you just have one or two of those people, that can really help you when you're going through a struggle or a challenge. And so, if you're really into fitness and people think you're being too much, and um, you're there's a couple different options. The mischievous side of me, if you're comfortable and you really feel like the person's being a jerk, sometimes you can voice that, but not tell them they're being a jerk. You can ask them a provocative question. You can say, like, what are you looking to get out of this? Are you trying to shame me? Like, are my abs projecting an insecurity onto you? Like, bro, what are you getting at? How about you join me, man? Put the cake down and pick up the carrot and let's rock and roll and get fit. Like, that is not always the preferred one, but like sometimes if people are bullying you because of your choices and you're comfortable with it, sometimes there's a subtle way to like or just be like, "Oh, you're so," or sometimes like with men, I do this a lot, like with macho men, like if they're challenging me, I go, "You are so adorable right now trying to control me." Like it's like, it's I don't recommend that every time, but these are all tools in your tool belt. And sometimes you can make the person feel silly, you know what I mean? And it's like I don't generally do that because I'm not a mean guy, but like they're kind of being mean by trying to control you or bully you. So sometimes, especially with the people who are fit, it's like, oh man, sometimes when people do work on themselves, it puts a spotlight on the other people who aren't doing work on themselves. And then they get self conscious and they start projecting their insecurities onto you. And it's like, oh, hey, I feel like you're projecting your insecurities onto me. Like, why don't you join me in eating healthy? That can be a thing that you can say. Just a tool in the tool belt. You might not be comfortable with that. Um, but sometimes you can just say like, hey, for the person who's fit, just be like, you know what? When I was not eating this way and working out, I felt really awful. I didn't feel good and I was having health struggles. And now I feel great. So I would really appreciate it if you didn't judge me for it. And also, like, I could show you how. Do you want to join me on this? There's lots of good food choices that taste good and are healthy. You can invite them to join you if that feels better rather than asking the provocative question. Um, but the reality is they're putting you on the spot if they're challenging your food choices. And so it sucks. You don't have a choice but other than to respond. And so you have to figure out a way to respond in a way that makes you feel the most emotionally well and comfortable. And that's why it's good to have a handful of tools in the tool belt. Like, if somebody is really making fun of me or judging me for my bigger body or my weight, this is where my tool in the tool belt is kind of nuclear. And I go, you know what? This doesn't really work. You're being mean and making me feel uncomfortable, and I have to walk away from this conversation. That's one option. Asking the provocative question, like, what are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to control, like, where are you going with this? Oh, I'm just trying to help you. Oh, well, you're actually not helping me. It's hurting my feelings. Can we change the conversation? That's another tool in the tool belt. Looking at them and going, it's adorable the way you try and control how other people eat, but grown-ups only care about themselves. So we're not at the kids' table. That's another tool in the tool belt. Or maybe sometimes, not always, but like taking a stand and pushing back and being like, hey, I think you're trying to help me, but did you know that when you say things like that, it hurts my feelings and I feel really uncomfortable just being direct like that? That's another tool in the tool belt. Or saying no without offering an explanation because you're at the work lunch and you don't want to be vulnerable, just being like, hey man, this is just the way I like to eat and I'm comfortable with it, like moving on. That's a tool in the tool belt. Like, no one size fits all for food choices, no one size fits all for boundaries either. It's best to kind of have these tools in your tool belt and then to kind of run a filter through, like, do I care about this relationship? Is this person safe being vulnerable? Are they attacking me and I should attack back, or are they accidentally offending me? What do I want to walk away from this? These are all challenging questions to ask yourself. There's a lot of nuance to boundary holding, but if you kind of have some ground rules with yourself, which is like, I'm never going to get emotionally dysregulated and throw a tantrum or attack them, because then all the attention gets taken off of the person who was violating my boundary and gets put onto me for throwing the tantrum and yelling at the person, even though. So that comes a lot down to breath work and relaxing and pause before you respond. We feel the urgency to respond to these things because there's an emotional charge. Whenever you feel that, pause, take a breath in. I can't control what other people say to me. I can only control how I respond. That takes 1 second to say that to yourself. And on the exhale, kind of relax your jaw, relax your belly. Like, I can only control how I respond. How do I want to respond to this person? You can even say to the person, I want to respond to you. Give me a second to think about this. I do it all the time. Like, let me think about how I want to respond to that for a moment and take a breath. And by the way, that creates a gap in the conversation. And sometimes that gap gives the other person, like, oh my gosh, this person has to think about how they want to respond. Maybe I can back out and say, never mind. And then you take a breath. It's a little awkward, but and then you go, okay, I care about this person. I don't care about this person. I owe this person an explanation. I don't owe this person an explanation. And then you have all these boundary tools in your tool belt because you've been listening to podcasts like this and practicing with your friends. And then So that was kind of a non answer, but it's because there really isn't a one size fits all. And I kind of got lost on what your original question was. Did that answer what you were asking?
Oh, I think you gave people plenty of tools on how to respond to the situation if they
Okay.
don't feel necessarily comfortable with the provocative question you originally suggested. I think so far we've talked a lot about how to set boundaries ahead of time, how to respond when challenged in the moment. Sometimes I find that you also aren't able to respond at all in the moment. You freeze and you feel really uncomfortable. And if you're able to respond, it's not the response that you would have wanted to have. So there could be that could be an opportunity to tackle that topic again in hindsight in the future with that same person. And so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts, Joe, on how it would be best to do that, to talk to that person afterwards and explore how you felt that your boundaries weren't being respected later.
That is a great question. And sometimes it's not a good time to respond to them. Sometimes it's because you freeze, like you said. But sometimes you just choose, like, man, everybody's looking. Right now is not the time to have this conversation. Maybe it's somebody who I do want to explain myself to, but not in front of everybody. And so there's two different scenarios where you don't want to answer them right away. Your nervous system plays a big part in this: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? So sometimes we want to fight, like this person's challenging me and I blow up on them. That's not a good solution. Sometimes we want to run away. We just got to get out of the conversation. Sometimes that is okay, like make a tactical exit. Sometimes we just freeze and we don't know what to say and we feel really uncomfortable. And then sometimes we fawn and we tell the person, yeah, you're right, I should eat the cake, or whatever the situation is. Essentially, that's your nervous system telling you that there's a threat and that it's shutting down or getting malfunctioning a little bit. And the reality is it's very uncomfortable, but it's not a threat. The person is not trying to actually kill you. That's our amygdala telling you. It's like it's a designed survival mechanism. So again, just practice coming back to the breath and relaxing your body, because that's a powerful tool to take your nervous system back over. If you use, I don't know if it's like how you guys have smoke detectors, if they're the same over here, but like we have smoke detectors that go off when you're cooking sometimes and there's no fire. And you have to press the button or you have to call the alarm company and say, hey, I was just cooking, there's no fire. But it's good to have the smoke detector. But a lot of times, our amygdala in our brain is like a smoke detector and it tells you there's a threat here, but really it's just an uncomfortable conversation and it's not a threat. And so, just like you have to push the button on the smoke detector and call the alarm company and say, hey, I was just cooking, there's no fire, you push the reset button by taking a breath in, putting your hand on your heart or something, and telling yourself with your brain, like, hey, I'm just cooking, there's no fire. You say, hey, this is just a conversation, I'm okay, I can it just, the words you use and the way you breathe and relax can help you recalibrate your nervous system if you practice that regularly. And sometimes it's just one breath. To answer your question though, yes, in the moment you might take a bite of cake and you just feel shitty about it and you have to address it later, or you just freeze and you don't know what to say, or you fight the person and you have to talk about it later, or there's just so many people around that it's not even your nervous system. You just make a tactical decision, like, I don't want to talk about this in front of all these people, but I love my friend here, so I am going to talk to him about it. And that is when you follow the same flow chart that we talked about earlier. The lunch is over. You wait till your emotional charge has died down, because conflict never gets resolved well when people are emotionally charged up. You might always be emotionally charged up, but at least like wait till the volume is turned down on it. Text or call the person and be like, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. When is a good time? That's the first thing. And then the person calls and answers, and now it's time to have that conversation. You can follow some rules of healthy conflict resolution. First of all, don't attack their character, even if they were being a jerk, because that will always put them on the defense and you're never going to get what you want out of it, which is the behavioral change. So if you say, you were really inconsiderate, you were not thinking about my feelings, I'm going through this challenge and you were just so rude, those things might be true, but instantly that person is going to be defensive and you're going to have a fight on your hands. So it's really best to stick to the formula of like, blank happened and I felt blank. So, like, hey, we were standing at the table and you started teasing me about being fit and being too much. And I felt really uncomfortable and I felt sad and I felt peer pressured to take the cake. I don't want to run into that again. Tell me your feelings on that and how can we solve this in the future? You might not like the other person's solution, but you're just sharing how you feel and you're giving them buy-in on how to solve it. And you're also giving them an opportunity to walk away from the fight with dignity and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I made you feel that way. Here's how we solve this. I'm not going to do that to you again. It might be as easy as that. Or they might go, well, you made me feel uncomfortable. You're too much. You know what? Like, we all like cake and you're making me feel insecure. And then you might have to go to the next thing, which is like a question of like, are you saying I'm responsible for your feelings? What are you saying here? Are you saying if I want to stick to my diet, I can't join you without making you feel uncomfortable? Like, make sure I want to hear you. I want to hear what you're saying to me. Tell me what you're saying. Give them the chance to talk, and then they'll show you what they're saying. And then you kind of go from there. It's a little bit of a dance.
Yeah, that was a brilliant explanation. Thank you. Joe, I think we covered so much in this podcast. I think it's going to be really, really valuable to my audience. I was wondering if there is anything that you'd like to end on that maybe we didn't touch on in enough detail at the time, or anything that we haven't said that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up.
Okay, so nothing major, but I think I took some notes and I would just like to solidify some bullet points. People think you're being bossy. You holding boundaries is not being bossy, especially if you don't try to control their behavior. You're just taking ownership of what makes you feel comfortable. They might have the perception that you're being bossy, but holding boundaries is not bossy. And you had talked about people feeling like they're making it awkward by holding a boundary. The other person is making it awkward if they don't love and support you, as long as you hold the boundary in a healthy way and you're just trying to do something healthy. So I would just challenge people to flip the script and go, I'm not making it awkward. It is awkward, but they're making it awkward. I'm just saying what feels healthy to me, you know? Um, and so sometimes if you're vulnerable and you just say, I could use a little grace and support here. I'm trying to do something with my food choices, and I could really use a little bit of grace and support instead of criticism. Are you open for that? Again, if you're comfortable saying that to the person, that's really helpful. um, and then just to know that you have lots of tools in the tool belt, and then just to know, like, don't attack. Hold your boundaries. Figure out what your guidelines are. Figure out what the timing is. And there's no one size fits all. Practice makes perfect. You're very valid if you feel uncomfortable about this. This is an uncomfortable topic. Other people have hidden addictions. Food is in front of everybody. So it's very challenging when you're making different food choices and everybody's looking at you. So your feelings are valid, but also you have to make the choices that are healthiest for you, and you're empowered and entitled to do so, and you're not bad or wrong or too much or a jerk for doing so. And so this struggle is very real. This is very challenging. So I wish you the best, and I just, whatever your food choices are or whatever your health issues are, I wish for everybody listening to this that they're able to surround themselves with people who love and support them, or build up the skills to navigate the situations where they're not. And when you work with your hands, you build up calluses, and at first it hurts and you get blisters, but then after a while, you're chopping trees down, and the axe doesn't hurt your hand anymore. You will build calluses to holding boundaries. Like, they will be very uncomfortable and your nervous system will be activated, and you'll probably screw it up. You'll go people pleaser one day, you'll attack one day. The more you practice, the better you'll get at it, and you will build calluses up, and pretty soon you'll do it enough to where it actually won't be uncomfortable talking about food and navigating these things because you've done it so much. So if you're really feeling like, I'm never going to get the hang of this, nobody's going to support me, this is always going to be uncomfortable, I promise you, just practice and surround yourself with supportive people if you can. You have the power to hold boundaries, to protect yourself, and to maintain relationships. It's just skills that none of us were taught. And so we don't have the sets and reps. So I just want to shine a little light of optimism if you're feeling really challenged by this. It's not easy, but you can do it and you'll get through it.
Thank you, Joe, for the beautiful closing words. Now, I'm wondering, could you please share where people can connect with you if they want to follow your work or get in touch, so I can put all the links in the show notes?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for the beautiful conversation and for connecting with me. I love what you're doing, and I very much have enjoyed talking to you. And I love your energy and your spirit. I'm mostly on Instagram at the Joe Spector, and if you want to sign up for my email list, I don't spam anybody, but once a month I send out a resiliency newsletter that I don't ask for anything or sell anything on there. I just share topics of mental health and resilience and kind of the things that we talked about today. Down the road, I have a book coming out and stuff will be on that email list, but that's like a year down the road. So for right now, I'm just offering guidance and advice for free. If anybody wants to connect, I have a little community there. I would love it. And yeah, I'd love to have you in my community.
Awesome. I'll put all these links in the show notes to the episode. Joe, it was a pleasure to connect with you. I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to talk today. And dear listeners, I am so thankful, as always, that you chose to spend some time with my voice and Joe's in your ear. And I will wrap up the podcast now, and I will talk to you next time.
Thank you so much, my brother.
Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.